Hello. It's lovely to be back. I won't say I missed you guys, but I think there was something missing.
We did a better job than you.
On set last week.
What do you mean I did a better job than him?
Look, no comment. But anyway, it's good to be home. After my travels, I was in the Indian Ocean. I was in East Africa, constantly being reminded about how much of a terrible job we're doing of running our economy here. But there is a story for another day. But nice to be with you guys, talking nonsense, discussing things we don't know anything about, and trying to fix the world's problems. And as usual, you shouldn't take us seriously. Why are you dressed normally? I see you even have black socks. Didn't know you owned any such.
And the beverage in that part of the world, they're definitely not interesting, but they appear.
At least the packaging is interesting.
You got interesting. What's going on? What? Do you have some important personal life changes that you want to discuss with us and the audience?
Well, not quite, but I'm dressed for the occasion. It's a special tea. So it turns out that we've got some fans from overseas in the UK who like and love the show, and they sent through tea and biscuits. This is an Earl Grey, but from Fortnum and Mason, and the biscuits to go with it.
A biscuit.
Yeah.
Are they banting friendly?
No, they're not.
Okay.
Okay. So to get my biscuits anyway.
So, it's lovely. So I'm dressed for the occasion and I'm going to enjoy it.
Okay, how are you dressed for the occasion?
And explain, how does it explain the black socks?
Look, you can wear any color sock you want. That I choose to wear bright socks some of the time, that's my choice.
Some of the time?
Yeah. It's really up to me. And today I just felt particularly, like I said, the going theme in this season is
summer.
Black. The going theme right now is black.
But okay, this season, I watched your show last week, and you talked about the French season. And it's summer there. And it's winter here.
Going theme.
Yes, in their summer.
Oh, okay. So let's be very clear. Black, you can wear black in winter. In fact, actually you wear a lot more black in winter. But I said the current theme in fashion at the moment.
In their summer.
Theme,
globally?
No, not seasons. Globally, the current theme, the color theme in fashion at the moment is black. Okay, so the idea is to accessorize as much black as you can. That's what I'm doing.
We're not even gonna
a knitted black tie.
We're not even gonna waste.
Okay. Yes.
No, we're not gonna waste any more recording time on this nonsense. Okay. What are we drinking?
Okay. Apparently, you indicated before the show started that you're familiar with this. I'm not.
No, it's your first time.
Yeah. So it's always a
You're a singleton virgin
to be doing something for the first time. Yeah, so apparently they claim it's luscious nectar. It's on the sweet side of the spectrum because they mature it in sherry and bourbon casks. It's 12 years old, and apparently it has notes of honey and nuts and coffee, all things that I quite like. So
we'll find out just now.
Should be an interesting experiment. You've had this before.
Yes.
What do you make of it?
I must say I found it quite ordinary, but it may have to do with the fact that I found it rather close to a
bourbon?
No. Johnny Walker Black Label.
Okay, so I'll probably like it because I like Black Label.
And my feelings about Johnny Walker, I think, are well known on this show.
You just have issues with the brand, but I actually think the Black Label is a decent whiskey. It's on the sweet side of the spectrum, so I like it.
And I haven't changed my mind. But I'll drink it. As usual in this country, there's no such thing as a boring week in the news.
None. It's impossible, it seems.
Yeah, so we've recently learned that the state wishes to commandeer people's maize harvest, and they're going to rope in the security forces to do this. I find that interesting to be happening so early in the harvesting season. So they're saying, I can't remember the numbers, but you're talking the tens of thousands of tons that they expected versus what they've received. Now, this is in the context of expecting thousands of tons. Millions of tons.
Yeah,
so
3 million, north of 3 million.
So this is very early in the season that we're now having to get the cops and the soldiers out to round up whatever maize harvest we have. What's that telling us?
That we fudge numbers, that we're very interested in fudging numbers. And I'm going to put a bit of context to this because it's important that we contextualize. If you think about 2 seasons ago, we were told that we were going to get 2.7 million metric tons. And it turns out that we got about maybe 1.5, but our consumption has actually increased. It's about 2.2. So we're already in a deficit. And what has actually happened is beyond last year, and that's why it's early on, we then had a drought. We were expecting at least the amount of inputs. And when they did the preliminary reviews, they thought that we would get 3 million metric tons. In fact,
so somebody thought we were going to get 3 million.
That's actually in our budget. That's actually in our budget.
Yeah, but why
it didn't rain?
In November, that's actually in our budget. The GDP growth was actually premised on us moving from 2.7 to 3 million.
I think you're conflating fudging with very bad forecasting, which we have a long tradition of making awful forecasts regarding yields and production.
So something incredible happened in the last 2 seasons where we had these ridiculous numbers, which we never used to have.
But we were coming off a drought and we did have a record season.
I'm saying prior is, you're saying that this is something that's endemic in our system. And I'm saying, no, that's actually not true. We were always off, but we would be somewhere around the region, the ballpark.
Well, you may remember a certain Minister of Agriculture flying around the country in a plane and
we thought that was
arriving at a
crazy,
forecast.
right? So
yeah,
I looked back.
Those were crazy forecasts.
No, actually they were not. He was out by 500,000 tons. Yeah, which
isn't a
anywhere in the world is crazy. But now we're out by more than 1 million metric tons. But in terms of inputs, see, this is an interesting thing. In terms of, because how they measure what we're actually going to get is they look at area under tillage, and they look at the inputs. So they look at Pumvudza and Command Agriculture. So the amount of...
And seed sales in general.
And seed sales in general. So the seed sales did happen. It's just that the output is way out, as in ridiculously out. So even if money was bad, these guys... And interestingly, the Ministry of Agriculture actually won an award for the best ministry or something.
From who?
From the government itself, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the best performing ministry, I think.
Yeah, we should do awards for the best. For the best pundit on Friday drinks.
So what I find quite interesting about this conversation around productivity in agriculture and what we're going to do to make sure we get the deliveries at GMB is I think it affects every aspect of our government, and our policy, which is this confusion, it seems to me, about who we are in terms of do we believe in command economics or do we believe in free market economics? Because it seems to me if we
why do you think there's confusion?
Yeah, because there's confusion because if we are a command economy in which all the grain grown in this country should be delivered to GMB and the inputs are supplied by government, why do we actually have farmers who are not government at all? Right? Either do command 100% and control the whole process from start to finish, so that you don't have to police loans or police deliveries or police anything, because it's you. It's a command agricultural society.
Is there any part of our economy that's not command?
If we believe in free market,
maybe let me articulate this point very well. You're saying if you look at the measures at the moment, they affect all farmers. But if you think about it, there's probably maybe 25% of farmers who did not get any inputs from the government at all. These were private contractors who went out.
They got subsidized electricity from the government?
But they don't set the price of
They don't
electricity.
set the price for electricity.
Yes, but neither do the command farmers
remember,
set the price of
No, the command
inputs.
farmers. So the command farmers,
They get
are
inputs at a
peculiar.
cost of zero.
No, they pay. It's a loan.
No,
And
they don't pay.
Well, it's not a loan if the factory you don't pay it back.
78% of the farmers.
And how many?
defaulted.
And how many of the farmers pay their ZESA bill?
I don't know. I
No,
don't.
those who done so in a private arrangement, they do pay their bills.
I think you should have a discussion with ZESA management.
Yeah, no.
See what happens when they try and
we're
switch
quite
off
happy
a farmer.
to. But then you know what?
Nkuma
It's-
Josh, you might want to comment on this.
It's actually one way in which you can do it if you honestly think that our electricity is subsidized, and a lot of farmers will be quite happy to subtract, to say, you know what, what's the commercial rate for electricity? I'll take it away from my earnings. But the point is,
They get free water?
Why am I?
They get free water.
I'm saying you can put a charge to it. If you honestly and earnestly believe in your argument, then you can put a charge to it. You can say, you know what, all these inputs you got at a subsidized rate, we need to pay for them. And they'll be quite happy. And I think they're about 25% or so.
See, my question is, look, right?
Or farmers.
Somebody's out there. They have a letter of allocation for the land that they are farming. So they paid nothing for the land. They're getting all of these inputs for free. According to George, they don't have to pay for the electricity. And now...
And they still don't produce.
And they're not delivering to GMB. So of
It was a
course-
drought.
So, well, okay. No, my point is...
What's the matter with you? I mean, did you not? We talked about it on the show. There was a drought.
Yes. So why is there concern from by the state that to make sure that if you harvest anything, you deliver it, we're going to involve the police and army? Why is there that concern then? Right. So my point is,
Fair point.
but my question really is most philosophical, to say, if we are saying that agriculture is so important that the state should be involved in every aspect of it, why doesn't it just take it over? Right? Why do we have independent farmers? Right? What's the point of having people who are not part of your organization who you then have to police if you are funding 80-90% of the whole thing and you own the land?
Then it takes away the political angle, right? Because they need to use the farms for political angles, for political campaigning.
No, but what he's saying is they can still achieve that end by, for example, putting a fixed markup.
Then
Or a
nobody
fixed
would want to. No, what he's saying is take over the farms, take over the running of the farms. And I'm saying then the individual.
No, he's saying
has no incentive.
he's saying make it command.
Yeah, it means that you're making command my farm. You're taking over my farm. Because right now there's some sort of idea that it's actually my farm, right? So he's saying if it's command, it's now government's farm.
So it goes back to his initial point that we're confused about whether we're a command economy or a free market economy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then also if you want to look at it from a purely political perspective, right? How many farmers are there? I suspect
There's about 200,000.
I suspect very much that there's a lot more farm workers than people who are wearing the hat.
Well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work that out.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, so this can't be about votes, right?
Oh no, it is about votes, but you're not getting it. So, in communist theory, political theory, you need to appease the elites. So, command agriculture is about appeasing the elites.
Have we changed the definition of the elites? Because I suspect a lot of elites in this town are not happy.
Oh no, a lot of the guys on the farms are happy. That's why only 22% pay back. So you're getting everything for free. Why wouldn't you be happy? You're getting everything for free. Right. So if you look at political theory, there's that group of people who are very influential in society, and you need to buy them. It's important that you buy this elite group, the bourgeoisie group. And how you do so, that's why you have command agriculture. Command agriculture is not for the commoner. It's really for this group, band of people. And if you think about it, 200,000, going with your number, that's huge.
That's George's number.
Yeah, going with your number, that's huge, right? Because if you're able to appease this group, then they are able to...
Well, and 200,000 is the number of farms, right? 250,000. Multiply that by 5, just to include the immediate families. You're over 1 million, you're getting to 10% of our population.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's making sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
But okay, fine. Assuming that, taking what you're saying at face value, okay, are you not better off controlling everything and still looking after them? Wow. So you ensure you get the production you want. And you don't have to.
I don't think you're better off, but your argument, which is a very valid argument, is if you prevaricate on strategy, you end up nowhere, right? Like actually choose which side you want to be. Make a choice.
If you want to write them checks, write them checks. If you want to make them productive farmers, make them productive
farmers.
Don't hang out in the in-between zone. But
an interesting thing, just on agriculture, an interesting thing that happened in the 90s when our tobacco farmers actually started doing extremely well, is that government actually allowed the commercial farmers, the tobacco farmers, to actually produce more. But what they introduced, it was Zimbabwe at the time, if you remember, is a super profit tax.
Tobacco levy.
Yeah, tobacco levy. So what they just did is they said, you know what, just produce as much as you want. When the season is good and the prices are good, then we will enjoy a bit.
We still have the same now. So the tobacco sector does well because of that. We still have a tobacco.
So let me give you a few interesting stats. So what has actually happened this year is tobacco prices internationally are actually up 25%. But our farmers are actually, I think it's up 10%. Yeah, more or less flat. But government takes away 25%
through the currency
retention. So our farmers, Malawian farmers, tobacco farmers are happy at the present moment. Brazilian tobacco farmers are ecstatic. But our farmers, unfortunately, are not enjoying the commodity boom. Which, if you think about tobacco prices...
but I think you're being... Well, okay, I was going to say facetious, but maybe you actually don't know much because you live in an air-conditioned building. But our tobacco quality...
I was actually given this information by a tobacco farmer.
But our tobacco quality this year is down because we had freak weather. So our weights are down, and the quality is down because we had too little rain and then too much rain. And all the rain came at the wrong time. So our quality is down. So our price being a bit lower does not necessarily mean that...
but he's not saying our price is a bit low. What he's saying is the farmer's not happy because they're not making as much because of this.
They don't make as much as farmer. The same rain season, same everything in Zambia, in Malawi. They're getting 25%.
No, but they didn't have the same rainy season.
They're more or less the same.
No, we had this little enclave in Southern Africa had freak weather. But what I do take that you're saying is that, take away all those factors. If you change the currency regime, they would have more money in their pockets.
A lot more money in their pockets. And they would actually...
And they would have an incentive to reinvest more into their farm and grow production.
More importantly, they have an incentive to start growing other crops. Because right now, the reason why they need that extra money, so it might appear that they don't need the extra money, but they actually do need the extra money because this is how they're diversifying away from tobacco.
And increasing their hectarage and
all sorts. Yeah.
And all sorts.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's go back to the discussion about, it looks like the Ministry of Agriculture is in a panic. Very interesting. They've got a young permanent secretary from the private sector who is the last person we expected to be instructing the GMB. That instruction goes just short of telling the GMB to go and raid individual farms, right? And to take the cops with them. And it's 1 or 2 words away from saying, go door to door. He's the last person you expect that to be coming from.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So are we in a panic?
Yeah. And can we just step back a bit, because I need to make a case, especially for the farmers, because there's something that I don't know whether it's the ministry or it's finance or whoever in government is not thinking through this thing. You want grain from the farmers, but you're only willing to give them, let's call it, when you convert, it's about 180, 150, 180, but you're willing to import grain from Zambia and pay $400 on the grain from Zambia. There should just be parity, right? If you're willing, whatever price you're willing to import grain at, if you give the farmers, the local farmers, that price, I kid you not, you'll start seeing grain coming in.
If it's there at all.
No, whatever is there. Because what the farmers are doing, it's a charade. The farmers know and understand what government is trying to do. So they know that if they hold out long enough, sense will prevail. But then sense is going to prevail, and we've imported, or all sorts of distortions have happened.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. But
I'll let you use the word panic, because we should be panicking, and I'll tell you why. Basically, because of the war in Europe, there is going to be a global shortage of grain. And the way the world works is that the big players get the first and biggest bite of the cherry, and they will consume most of what's available. And the scraps that are left, small, poor countries like Zimbabwe will have to go into a bidding war with everybody else. And so if those guys experience a 20%, 25% increase in price, we, because we will be competing for a very scarce remainder, we might be paying 100, 200% more. So we.
Okay, well, I think you're being a bit dramatic. But
No, I actually think he's quite right. I mean, this is June, right? Imagine what's going to happen.
We're not going to pay 10 times more.
So I'll give you an example, precedent, and we because we saw this with the cost of shipping a container from China to Harare, right? So what happened at the height of COVID is that the big players bought most of the capacity, and everybody else had to bid for a much, much smaller portion. So whereas the big players paid 15, 20% more, if you were a small player in Harare trying to import a container, you were paying as much as 500% more. That sounds insane, but that's the reality, right? Because if last year's, if current demand is 100%, right, and actual production is 75%, and the major players take 74%, and we are left with everybody else who's poor
competing the one
bidding for that 1%, and our demand is 5%, what do you think our price is going to be?
Fair enough.
So
all you need to do is just look at the future prices of wheat, maize, everything.
And we are coming off of last year's production, right? So there are farmers in the major wheat producing country like Ukraine that are not putting anything in the ground right now because they
that's an understatement. They haven't harvested what they put in the ground last season.
And that's the second or third largest exporter of wheat. They are the largest exporter of sunflower
They're
oil.
the largest exporter of wheat.
So what do you think is going to happen? So and China and Europe
discontent,
and the Americans are looking at all of this and they're saying we need to secure our supplies. And they've got the capacity. First, they've got the cash and they've got the political muscle to go step in there and say, look, I want exportation.
By the way, you guys want a few more guns? Can you make sure that whatever wheat you have comes to us?
So by the time
or we'll protect the wheat farms.
Yes.
By the time Zim is offered a bite of the cherry, there'll hardly be anything left. And there'll be a bunch of other poor countries as well bidding ferociously for those scraps.
There's some poor countries that actually have money.
And so what prices do you think we will be paying?
Okay, fair enough. Good argument. But coming back closer to home, right? So do you say in November, Mtuli told us he'd paid for 3 million tons, basically?
He was forecasting 3 million tons.
Which means he had paid for it.
He had paid for
through the
well, not all of it.
He didn't. The banks did against his guarantee. So you've got last year, the banks got back. You say 22%.
22% maize
of the money
22%.
They loaned.
13% for soya.
Of the money they loaned. So the 78% is now a government asset in the bank's books.
Yes.
The government owes the banks for the 78%.
Yes. And thanks to inflation, that's been inflated away.
Wait. But somebody paid.
No, there was a wealth transfer. That's what inflation is.
Yes.
So
it's a
somebody
wealth transfer.
No, I mean for government.
The bank depositors transferred wealth to government or to the borrowers,
farmer.
to the farmers.
To the farmer. There's a transfer of wealth from savers to farmers, from taxpayers to farmers.
And we've got the same scenario happening now.
Worse. Because now
Why do you think it's worse?
Because at least last year we only imported, I think, 100 million worth of grain.
Like Just right at the end.
Yeah, right at the end. Whereas this year, we starting to import in
During the harvest.
During the harvest. So imagine what's going to happen in October, November.
Oh, and things are going to get much, much worse. Because you see, if you are pushing a trolley in a supermarket and you're buying stuff, and that stuff was imported, chances are that the transaction that initiated the shipment of that product from wherever it comes from to that shelf, was done 90 days ago at a price that's 90 days old. So this,
No, it's actually maybe 180 days.
So the crisis in Europe started on the 24th of February. And so we will only, the full impact of all the negative changes in terms of higher prices.
6 months later.
We're only going to feel it, 6 months later.
Third quarter.
So we're talking August, September. So if you think the prices on the shelves...
It's actually more than 6 months. Because you guys who live in air-conditioned buildings look at the world differently from the real world. But you don't plant every day. You plant certain crops in summer, you plant certain crops in winter. So once that war started and you lost a planting date for certain crops, your next window to plant
is this time next year.
What he's saying, he's saying the impact, you start feeling it in 6 months. So what we're feeling right now has nothing to do with the war in Ukraine.
Well, that's all about the America printing money.
Yeah, exactly. So the war in Ukraine will start feeling the impact of that come third quarter.
Yeah, August, September, when
then what you're saying is actually it will start third quarter, but it will run through.
And it's going to get worse
because that's only the beginning. Because next year we'll run through the reserves that are sitting around the world. But right now...
So the world on average is sitting on about 90 days worth of food reserves. So it's not even going to be next year.
No, well, I mean, you've got the 90 days reserves plus whatever was harvested and whatever was, and so on. But over time, that 90 days reserves depletes. And like right now, the Ukrainians should be planting their summer crops.
They're not.
I have a feeling...
They've got other issues.
They've got other problems to worry about. And those who are planting are doing so at highly inflated costs. So your fertilizers are up, your petroleum prices are up. So when those crops in 6 months' time, the summer crops that will be available in the world in 6 months' time get onto the market, they'll be at a vastly different price.
It's actually much worse than what's happening in Ukraine. So a place that actually doesn't have any war issues on the ground, right? The world's largest producer of maize, for example, the United States, right? Those farmers use a lot of ammonium nitrate to grow their maize. And the biggest ingredient in ammonium nitrate is natural gas. And that's at sky high prices. And farmers are sitting on their desks doing their numbers and they're thinking, well, I'm going to use less ammonium nitrate because it's so expensive.
So the yield.
There's going to be less hectarage of maize.
So this is where I differ with you. I'm less worried about the rest of the world because the minute you say that for the farmer, you know why they would invest? It just means that maize prices are going to go up. So the market system adjusts quite quickly.
This is him in
for the first
office again.
For the first world, but it doesn't adjust for a command economy. It doesn't adjust as quickly. That's the problem. So for the US, they're not gonna. Yes, it's a worry, but the brilliant thing about the market economy is it will adjust quite quickly. But the problem with the command economy is how are you going to incentivize a farmer to plant maize for the next year?
That's a very good question.
After you've gone through this horrendous period where the army is coming to your farm and taking your produce.
They're coming very close to coming to your farm, but they're not. Maybe this is a good time.
And then you tell the same guy that he needs to increase his hectarage.
It won't work. Yeah. But this is a good place for us to take a break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. We'll go to the little boys' room. We'll powder our noses and shape our, what's it called? A shade.
Yeah.
Yeah, shape our shades. And we'll be right back.
ndauya kuzomira newe, ndauya kuzokura zvakanaka, ndauya kuzomira aiwa, ndauya kuzokura zvakanaka, ndauya kuzomira aiwa, ndauya kuzowira, ndauya kuzorerutsa ndima, aiwa ichareruka, ndauya pakuvira kwezuva, ndauya kuzomira pandorema, ndauya kuzotomira pakaoma, ndauya kuzomira pandorema, ndauya kuzotomira pakaoma, ndauya kuzokura zvakanaka, ndauya kuzomira aiwa, ndauya kuzokura zvakanaka, ndauya kuzomira aiwa, ndauya kuzokura ndakagara ndakutsa, ndauya kuzomira auchamira we, ndauya kuzokura apachina chinokunetsa, ndauya kuzomira kana basa wariketsa, ndauya kuzokura apachina chinokumutsa, ndauya kuzomira kana basa wariketsa, ndauya kuzokura zvakanaka, ndauya kuzomira aiwa, ndauya kuzokura zvakanaka, ndauya kuzomira aiwa, ndauya kuzowira, ndauya kuzorerutsa ndima, aiwa ichareruka, ndauya pakuvira kwezuva, ndauya kuzomira pandorema, ndauya kuzotomira pakaoma, ndauya kuzomira pandorema, ndauya kuzotomira pakaoma, ndauya kuzokura zvakanaka, ndauya kuzomira aiwa, ndauya kuzokura zvakanaka, ndauya kuzomira.
Welcome back. Is your bladder relieved?
Very much so.
Are you refreshed?
Quite.
Oh, fantastic. So, okay. So, consensus around this table, at least, is the agriculture season is not looking good. Impact on economic growth forecast. So, we started the year with Ministry of Finance calling it 7%, I think. World Bank, IMF talking about 5 or 6%. This week, FDB, which is the love child of World Bank and IMF, saying it's 3%.
Well, it's likely to be lower, but I think at this point, it's rather than focus on the numbers, let's contextualize. When the budget was done, it was a $927 billion Zimbabwean dollar budget.
What does that number even mean?
I was about to get into that, right? That the rate at the time, the rate that they were using at the time was, I think, 87, 90.
No, but you're being disingenuous. At the time, we said clearly Mutuli and the ministries have different rates in mind. So what rates were the ministries using?
I'm telling you what the rate that Mutuli gave.
Okay.
Right? This is what the budget was based on. Right? That
okay. I won't take us down a rabbit hole. Okay,
yeah,
I'll let you.
I'll
let you get away with it.
I'm saying it's 927. The rate was 90. Call it 90. Began the year at the rate was now 109. The rate is now, this is the official rate, is now 308. Right?
One of the official rates, anyway.
Yeah, one of the official rates.
There's no convergence of the two.
Not quite.
No, not really.
But
they're coming close.
They're coming close, yeah. Not really. But the point is, we should have a supplementary budget by now. Parliament, if Parliament was really playing its role, they'll be looking at that, because then where's the growth going to come from? Because the growth was coming from 3 million metric tons from maize. The growth was coming from
maybe we'll still get it. You know, the cops will raid everyone's farm and.
Well, that's why I said I don't want to dwell on the numbers. I just want to contextualize, because then we'll dwell on the numbers. Let's say a half year, or third quarter. Then we can say, okay, I think now we can actually zero in on that.
So he's the guy in the car when you go into Bulawayo and you get to Norton and the tank is on quota. He's the guy who's like, yeah, let's revise the situation when we get to Gweru.
No, I'm not the guy. I'm the guy who says, George, you said a quarter tank can get us to Bulawayo. We're in Norton and it's done. Right? That's all I'm saying. I'm saying the Minister of Finance came and he said, this is the amount of money we need. And actually, it turns out before half year, that money is gone, at least what the budget says. Now, to his benefit, what is actually happening is ZIMRA collections have also been increasing. Not as much as they would expect, because they changed the law around 50%, that instead of paying 100% in Forex, you could pay 50%. So what they were expecting might be lower, but what has happened is with inflation, tax revenue has also increased. So in his kit, he might have more than he expected to have around the same time, but he's still far below he's actually running. You could potentially be in a deficit position at this point in time. But what we would benefit from is him coming out.
Wait, you think he's got a deficit?
I think he's got a deficit at this point.
In his books or at central bank?
No, in his books.
So you think he's got a deficit in his books and
At
at
the
central
moment.
bank?
In which
Yeah.
currency?
He accounts in one currency.
Yeah,
whatever
so-
currency he.
No, but a deficit is a deficit.
Yeah, actually. So I think that right now he's got a deficit. But I could be wrong, and I'm putting it out there. I could very well be wrong that he's got a deficit. But I think that his budget, where he was budgeting 927, it's meaningless when the rate has, in fact, the rate has devalued by 65%.
Since the beginning of the year, but
Since
by
the beginning
more
of the
from
year.
the time that he budgeted.
It's probably around 70%.
Look,
So unless he shows us that actually from a revenue perspective, he is overperformed by, more than 2/3 to balance, I think he would have a deficit at the moment.
I'm amazed that people actually spend any amount of time looking at these forecasts, whether it's from IMF, World Bank, or AFDB, because they've got such a long track record of getting things horribly wrong, especially when looking at Zim numbers. So I don't know that there's much value in looking at it. But what my contribution is based on is not on an analysis of the numbers like Tinashe's. I think
It's based on anecdotes.
no, not anecdotes. We need to be alive to the reality that is on the ground today, right? If you look at, and I'm not talking about Zim dollar prices. If you look at the price of fuel, if you look at the price of anything with an import component, right, in US dollar terms, those prices have actually gone up, and we are at the beginning. We are only starting to feel the effects of these higher global prices, and the crisis is only going to get worse. So we know historically that we import $6-7 billion worth of goods every year. That bill is going to go up significantly. On the export side, we're going to benefit from higher prices of commodities, but production isn't growing as fast as these prices are going to go up. So the average Zimbabwean is going to be...
no, I think that premise is wrong.
Yeah, actually.
I think that premise is wrong because the increase in
And that's
the
the problem
import
with
bill,
anecdotes. That's the problem.
the
with
increase in
anecdotes.
the
I'm
import
not a
bill,
fan of anecdotes, but on
the increase in the import bill
pushback.
will be the same as the increase in the export bill.
Why?
If the two are constant.
Your tax revenues actually increase.
But
No,
You-
we're just
but-
talking about exports and
yes,
and imports.
but the argument's the same. He's just extending the argument. But the argument I would use if I was you would be the extent to which the economy, or the extent to which government revenue is driven by US dollar receipts, and the extent to which it's driven by very pure local receipts. When I say very pure, because there's a certain amount of
Some dollars, basically, that's what you're talking about.
No, but there's a certain amount of VAT that is driven by the rate. So when you bought this this afternoon, you might have swiped for it, and the VAT will be a Zim dollar VAT, but the price you paid for it was based on the parallel rate.
Okay.
So Zimra will participate in the
That's
increase in
point
the
I
rate.
was making, and that's the problem with anecdotes. There's a reason why we go back to the budget, and there's a reason why every year we have a budget, because actually it's mandated. So it's part of our fiduciary duty, and it's mandated by the Constitution, right? So we must always zero down back to the numbers. So
Yeah,
while
okay, but-
our anecdotes are very important, we must go back to
what
the
I'm saying is
framework.
not anecdotal. So we know how much the price of...
So you must come back to Mtuli's budget and show me the line item that is actually affected by your anecdote, and we can debate it.
No.
And its impact on the overall budget.
So okay, let's just work with the logic of what I'm saying before we aggregate it to national accounts. Okay, so if you're running a household, right, and because you consume a lot of things with import component, if the cost of those items goes up faster than your income, right, that household is poorer, it's going to consume less.
But
there's less
but the
aggregate
question,
demand.
but the question is,
that,
but the question is
that's
that
not
is that
necessarily
premise, is
true.
that premise true?
It's not necessarily
Because
true.
because if you're running a household in Zimbabwe selling fuel, okay, fuel is a bad example because it's US dollar. Selling beef,
No, even fuel. Let me simplify for you. If the price of fuel increases from $1 to $1.67, what do you naturally do? You spend less.
Yes, this is correct.
So you're still within budget.
Yeah. Look, if you're
Right.
if you're earning $100, you're still going to spend $100.
What you're saying is, oh guys, let's worry because the price of fuel has gone up, and then I'll come back and say, well, yeah, it has, but I'm traveling less.
but what I'm actually saying, which is a
No,
bit
no,
different, what I'm actually saying, which is different from him, when you look at the national
He's
accounts,
making my point for me, but anyway, I'll let you finish.
when you look at the national accounts, the price of everything in US dollars has gone up. But daddy sells fuel. So our household income has also gone up. Are we better off or worse off? And I think the answer is not clear
Yeah, it's
until
not
we see the
necessarily
numbers.
So I think the answer is clear, and this is the point that I want to make.
No, it's not necessarily
Yeah,
true.
yeah,
It's an
yeah, wait.
anecdote.
No.
Unless you have evidence, it's not necessarily
and I
true.
want to, if you allow me,
Okay.
to present the evidence. Yeah. Okay, because
you actually have data points.
yes, I have data points.
Okay, so give us give us the data point. Give us the data point.
Give us data points.
Yeah.
So what are our major export items, and to what extent of those the prices of those items gone up on the global stage? Right.
Gold,
platinum,
platinum,
tobacco. Right.
kids. Kids. Don't forget the kids.
Yeah, remittances.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What are our major imports? Right.
That's still anecdotal. That's not a data point.
This is well.
Okay, let him make his argument. Okay. Our big import items are fuel.
Fuel, right? What has happened to the price of fuel? And when you
We don't know how much fuel we've actually imported over the last five months.
no, but we know
Okay,
that the
okay,
cost has
okay.
gone up.
We're going down a rabbit hole.
See, if you say you've got observable data points, you should be able to tell us that actually you actually don't care what the price is internationally. You should be able to tell us actually from January to March or to May, this is how much fuel we've actually imported. That's what an observable data point is. It's not speculating on did we import more, did we not import, what's been the price.
I think we're going down.
Don't care about that.
I think
we now need data points. And
I think
that's
we're
why
going down a rabbit hole. Let's go back to the original question. Maize yield almost certainly lower than forecast.
Exactly.
Impact.
That's a data point.
Impact on the size of the economy in 2022.
Oh, fantastic. So let me give you a good example, right? Because that's a data point. A data point is this.
Okay, can we move away from you lecturing what a data point is?
I want to use that as a point, right? That actually in the budget, he was budgeting 3 million metric tons. Right now, the same Ministry of Agriculture is looking at 1.4 million metric tons.
So that's less than last year.
That's half. So you can actually go into the numbers and say, well, that's a big problem. It means there's a deficit. And we're actually going to import more. And we started to import in May. And what price are we importing at? So that's why I'm speculating at this point, because I don't have the data, I'm speculating that Mtuli has a budget deficit. Right.
Okay.
At this
But
point.
but I want us to move. I want us to move.
GDP.
No, but I want us to move. Exactly. I want us to move away from the fiscus and go to GDP. Okay, so look, we've known for a couple of years that Mtuli is in trouble. Mtuli's numbers will never balance, no matter what he does.
No, I'm actually quite surprised you don't see how.
No,
So
but let's talk about
GDP growth was based on 3 million metric tons.
That's what I want to talk about.
And then if you don't hit the 3 million metric tons,
He doesn't get his 6%.
he doesn't get his 6%. So he's probably because it's half, it's probably around 4% according to his data. So that's
but
one
you're
line item.
always telling us that agriculture is only 8% of the economy.
No, I'm looking at the impact on his growth, because he was also looking at growth from mining, and mining has outperformed. We don't have the numbers, the actual exact numbers, so that could compensate for the decline in agriculture. But we're also looking at electricity, and electricity he was looking at a boom this year.
We're not. It's not too late to. It's too early to write off Kariba South. It's too early to write off Wange 7 and 8.
Yeah, but we've already lost 6 months of the year.
But okay.
So 5 months.
Or you think something's going to magically change?
No, I'm just being pedantic.
Okay.
Okay, so I think the moral of the story is it's not looking good. We don't know how bad it is, and maybe we'll get some numbers soon.
It's important to just contextualize, but as the numbers come in, the other useful number that we usually use.
Does he not get that I'm trying to wind up the segment?
Well, this is important
He's a
for
bit slow on the uptake sometimes.
No, this is very important for people to understand that we use Reserve Bank numbers. So sometimes the money.
We also use Ministry of Finance numbers,
less
and we
so.
also use GMB numbers.
Yeah, less so. But sometimes it comes together with the central bank, and the central bank latest numbers that we have is of March, so it's of no use to us.
And then
So
they're
that's I'm trying to
conveniently
encourage you.
converted to Zim dollars as well, which
I'm
makes
trying to
it even less
encourage
useful.
them to publish the numbers. If the central bank give us the latest numbers,
You think they need your encouragement?
Do you think
persuasion.
that they haven't published them for lack of encouragement?
It might be.
Before we get into trouble, we're gonna go for a short break. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Dairara moirisa rudzu daida makore mazana mana sawira huya timborangana timboronga tichine mukana handirambe ishe ninobvuma kana mati yangu nguva yakwana sawira huya timborangana timboronga tichine mukana daita isiva ramangwana taingovhunza ndewani mukana dainda isiva ramangwana taingovhunza nderani jana sawira uya timborangana timboronga tichine mukana sawira uya timborangana timboronga tichine mukana daita isiva ramangwana taingovhunza ndewani mukana dainda isiva ramangwana taingovhunza nderani jana sawira uya timborangana timboronga tichine mukana.
And we're back. Good to have you still with us. I mean, we went some sort of weird rabbit hole in that last segment. I don't even know why I hang out with you guys.
It's for the booze.
He just couldn't keep up.
Can we just stay on point? But anyway, I'm not even going to try and finish that discussion because who knows where it will end. Also in the news this week, so there was apparently a statutory instrument 103A, I think, or some number, that's now been
It's hard
reversed.
to keep track. I mean, we issue so many of these things.
I mean,
honestly.
the telling thing is we're now in the hundreds.
And it's only May.
And it's May. Well, June now. Anyway, it's been reversed.
Which is good. Although Tinashe obviously has a different opinion.
But you tell us a bit about this. Is it 103A? Whatever number it is. A. I remember it's got an A at the end. So there must be a B and a C to it. But anyway, so what's the statutory instrument that's been reversed?
Well, basically, in a nutshell, the statutory instrument basically spoke to the brokerage fees that stockbroking firms earn. They reduced that from 0.92% to 0.76%. And we actually spoke about it a little bit in the last show and last week with the former with Tafazwa. And basically, it's been reversed. We're back to where we used to be before it was issued.
This also affects the capital gains tax.
No. So this just affects the transaction costs excluding the withholding tax.
Okay, so
Although there's some confusion because the statement from the ZSE announcing the reversal made reference to the statutory instrument that was talking to the withholding tax and not the brokerage charges.
I'm confused.
okay,
But
okay, we know you're the 6-year-old.
I don't want to be accused of being pedantic.
Okay, we know you're the 6-year-old. Can you say that again to a fellow 6-year-old?
No. Well, in essence, what happened was that the charges were changed last week when we spoke about them a little bit when Tafadzwa was on the show last week, and they were changed this week. Back to where we used to be.
So there are no extra charges. And then third-party transfers, is that still prohibited?
So, yes, that's still prohibited.
Now, how is it still prohibited if the law that prohibited them has been cancelled?
Well, the announcement that was speaking to changes in the SI spoke to the charges. It did not speak to the third-party payments.
Sorry.
And by the way, just to be fair, global best practice, you can't, there's no, brokerages will not wire money to somebody other than the account holder, and they won't receive money for the credit of an account from somebody other.
Because the money laundering rules. But okay, so you're saying there was a statutory instrument that said, do this, and now
a week later,
there's a statement from the ZSC.
Yep. But
no statutory instrument.
No.
So why do you think the statutory instrument's been cancelled?
Because there's a statement.
So the CEO of the ZSC wrote you a letter saying ignore the law.
It was published. It's a public statement. It's not a letter to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The CEO of the ZSC made a statement saying ignore the law.
Well, they've basically said that there are going to be some changes, and effectively, when those changes are put through,
he said ignore the law.
Yeah, pretty much. Basically, that's what it says.
And now we're going to disregard the law with effect from tomorrow morning.
No, it's already started happening.
Oh, so you guys are disregarding the law? Okay. Help me understand this. How does this make sense to you as an investment professional?
No. So I think whether all of this makes sense is not an assertion that I would make that this makes a lot of sense. I think, look, we and this is not new. We've seen a long history of it.
So that makes it okay.
No, I'm not saying it's okay. So if you actually think about it, I'm just going to stick to the capital markets and the ZSE.
It's okay.
Right? If you look back at 2020 June, when the stock market was closed for a month and Old Mutual and PPC were suspended from trading, this was just an announcement, right? There was no
statutory instrument,
legal due process, where I's were dotted and T's were crossed that made this happen. It was just an announcement, and it effectively became the law. And that's how things work in this part of the world. And that's one of the challenges that we have, that you can have a policymaker wake up and say, well, this directive is now de facto law, even though a lawyer might say, well, actually, that's not legal.
And why don't lawyers say, okay, you're not a lawyer, you won't answer for lawyers. But, okay. This is a good point, Tinashe. Because these terms are economic terms that we abuse in investment banking circles. Distinguish volatility from uncertainty from chaos. And
Okay.
and let's then make it relevant to what's going on.
Okay. All right. So I'll try and simplify it. Volatility is something that we can mathematically calculate. So a risk that one is able to calculate. So you can put ones and zeros to it. You can put probability
when we have this
and
much rain,
for the last 100 years,
and we have this year, then the price of maize will probably go up by
X amount. Yeah. So volatility is something that we can calculate. Uncertainty, and here, just for those that are pedantic, like I am, I'm using Frank Knight's paradigm. So his framework. So
we just as simpletons are just gonna have.
So he distinguishes between risk and uncertainty. Risk is that which you can mathematically calculate. So it's something that you actually can see and you can recognize and you can avoid. So an accident, traveling from Harare to Mutare and traveling from Harare to Mashingo. Masvingo is a
More dangerous.
more dangerous road. You can calculate it, and then what sort of risk parameters you can mitigate the risk. Then uncertainty defines it as something that cannot be calculable. So it's something that it's there, it's present, but you cannot calculate it. It's not exactly a black swan. So Nassim would perhaps term it a black swan, but it's not a black swan. But it's undiscovered territory. So you know that there's turbulence. So you fly, and there's extraordinary turbulence for whatever reason.
So you don't know what might happen.
It's a dangerous
activity
that
you undertake.
That you've
so in the first example, if you plant maize, you can look at the rainfall patterns and the temperatures, and you can probably calculate the future price of maize.
Exactly.
In the second scenario, you know that the moment you plant maize, strange things may happen.
Yes. Yeah.
And
pests or an unusual pest,
unusual disease or whatever.
Yeah, something that is mutated. So you've always calculated that, okay, there's always this amount of pesticide I need to use because of the pests that are in my field. But over time, it has actually mutated.
So this chemical doesn't work. And
it actually doesn't work.
Okay, so that's uncertainty. Yeah. What's chaos?
So chaos is just complexity. So we've looked at something that I can calculate. So risk is everywhere in the world. Then the second thing, uncertainty, are undiscovered markets. Unknowns market. So developing markets, Zimbabwe more so, highly uncertain. Then chaos is highly complex chaos. Highly complex
things are just happening.
They're just happening. You can't predict. You can't.
So let's go back. Sorry. Okay, let's go back to our example that we're walking through. So we've said volatility is the price of maize may go up or down, but you can kind of work it out based on what we know
and insure against it.
And we've said uncertainty is
you can't insure against it.
You know that there are agricultural things that go wrong when you're planting maize, and there are other things that you don't know about. Yeah. And you're saying chaos is that once in a while a madman comes and burns down your field.
Black swan event, yeah.
Now,
the level of complexity increases. So uncertainty, imagine if you have 10 things that are uncertain.
10 variables.
10 variables that. So it's the level of complexity.
Yes. So now
if you move from 10 to 1,000.
so now you're talking about a madman burning down your field, Makorokoza invading your farm, your great grand uncle coming with a legal lawsuit against you, all happening at the same time.
You get sick.
It's chaos. Now I want us to come back
and
get
divorced.
I'm not.
That's chaos.
I want us to come back to now this issue of statutory instruments being issued with the frequency they are, and some of them being reversed, being toned down with the frequency it's happening. Which of those three boxes does that land us in? And what does that mean for business and finance?
And I must say, I love the way you've articulated it, because, my mathematical friends will actually say that if this is a circle, right, and we start here as predictable risk, and we move down uncertainty, turbulence, blah, 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 blah. They actually say that
we're back at predictability.
Actually, chaos is predictable. So you're back. It's just that its level of complexity is not one that we're accustomed to, but we can sort of predict that there will be
strange things will happen.
Strange things are going to happen. So you're going in the dark, and strange things are going to happen. And so that's why there's chaos theory. Mathematics, they actually have.
Okay. All right. So you're going down the rabbit hole. But I want you. But I want you to go down, because the producer is going to chop my head off just now. I want you to go down the investment banking and the finance side of this. What does it mean when you can predict that crazy things are going to happen?
It's chaotic. I mean, You don't need to be a rocket scientist to.
And what does it mean for the economy and for investment?
Where else in the world have the policymakers overnight made a startling announcement that lending has stopped forthwith? When was the last time this happened anywhere?
In Ethiopia.
And then 2 weeks later, say, oh, no,
Sorry.
As you were, as my housemaster used to say in high school. Carry on.
Yeah, 10 days later, there's a U-turn. It's chaos. And that's one of
you can't model it. Isn't that the nightmare for investment bankers? You can't model it because you don't know whether it's going to be stopping lending, whether they're going to increase the capital gains tax on your investment. You've made an investment, you've calculated
a bunch of things,
and then you wake up and then all of a sudden they're going to take 40% of your money when you sell.
The goalpost is moved.
And then you accept the risk that you're going to sell 40%, you're going to lose 40% when you sell. Then the day after you sold, they say, oh, no, it was actually 4%.
So I think it's very important. Mathematicians will claim that they can calculate, but I'm sort of swayed to your argument that I think it's chaotic. But there's something that, as economists, we can help define.
They can calculate. Show me a mathematician who thinks they can calculate which statutory instrument is going to be issued this Saturday and how many days.
They can sort of predict. Anyway, I don't want to get into it because I don't believe in that.
I want to meet such mathematicians.
Okay, we'll bring one on the show.
Please do.
But the point I wanted to make is what you guys are articulating, and they've articulated very well, is the difference between a country like Mozambique that can go into a war and people still invest in it. A country like the DRC, where it's
perpetually in war.
Warlords and all sorts of things. I mean, it's divided in all sorts of manner, but people still find it investable. And people, even the Buccaneers, are afraid of Zimbabwe. It's precisely.
Well, somebody made the point, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, that we made progress this week. We had a whole $25 million coming from outside investors.
Just 12.5.
12.5, not 25. Are you sure?
From the European Investment Bank. Yes. One of the banks. I think it was 12.5, right?
No, it was 25 million. Capital. It was 25 million going to two banks, 12.5.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
I missed the other bank.
Yeah, I think it was NMB.
Well, it's your job to read the news.
But my point is,
glad that you were at work this week.
My point is, I was in a conversation earlier in the week where we were discussing whether this should actually be news. But the very fact that I was in such a conversation about $25 million in a $15 billion economy.
That anyone should know that a bank raised a $12 million line.
Credit facility. It's like.
It's not supposed to be a big deal, right?
Well, it was such a big deal. They had an evening event for it, right?
Oh, did they? I didn't get invited.
We're not important, clearly.
Yeah.
I think more likely we say things that upset people.
But this is where we are. We're at a place where when we step into global capital markets, global credit markets, and we manage to unlock all of $25 million, we celebrate. It's a big deal. So, and I think to marry that to your question about volatility, uncertainty, and chaos, it just speaks to where we are on the spectrum. In the context of global capital. It's a tacit admission and acknowledgement that we have behaved so badly that raising that we should pat ourselves on the back if we can raise $25 million.
Meanwhile, $25 million in that big bank is probably signed off by a second-year associate. It's not something that concerns the bosses.
Mozambique is raising $20 billion.
And again, I'll say this tongue in cheek. Do we still have big banks in this country? If you look at the balance sheet sizes today in US dollar terms.
Well, that's saying
so our entire loans and advances is $1 billion. Equity Bank, just one bank in
an African bank
in Kenya, its loans and advances are $5.3 billion.
Well, at some stage, one of our blue chips had debt running into the hundreds of millions. You may remember discussion / scandal.
I like that you use the word blue chip, so just out of curiosity, in global equity markets, what kind of market cap do you think you need to have to be called a blue chip?
Well, probably about the GDP of Africa.
Well, not that big. That would put us at that's probably you're looking at $1.5 trillion. So that's just a handful of companies globally. But
there are companies that have got the GDP of Africa.
More than.
But
we are 2% of Africa.
But what I will say is that there are small caps that have market caps bigger than the entire ZSE.
On that sobering note, we'll bring this discussion to an end. I'm a little bit depressed.
You shouldn't be. I'm very optimistic.
You always are.
I think one of the encouraging things about the frequency of SIs that we have in this country is that almost half of them are corrections.
Anyway, since we are on a lighter note, there is a
that's predictable, right?
Imagine if we just had these crazy policies and we didn't correct any of them. Where would we be? So look, the glass is half full.
Yes. Anyway, I'm reminded, not because of what you're talking about, but because I'm trying to cheer myself up, I'm reminded of a quotation I read on one of our sister publications several months ago. And I'm going to paraphrase. If you want to teach your kids about life and taxes, take away 1/3 of their ice cream.
I hope you haven't actually run this experiment.
I did this afternoon. Didn't end well. It's been lovely having you along. We hope that we've inspired some thoughts and that in turn, you will raise some of these issues with people around you. And if you have access to people that make policies in this country, that you raise some of the points, not because we're right, but because these are important issues that must be discussed. And as usual, we are not experts. We don't know what we're talking about. But we raise issues that we think have an impact on the future of this country and how the direction that this country's economy takes. So have a lovely weekend. Stay safe, be careful, be good. If you can't be good at it.